like that. So I don't know if you started that recording or if I did, but I'm going to pause it. Hi everybody, this is Steve Hargadon and welcome to Conversations.net. This is a fun new project. Dan's my third interview in this new series. Dan, is it Dan Schawbel? Am I saying that correctly?
You're one of 3 people in the entire world who gets it right. Congratulations.
Well, with a name like Hargadon, I have to be careful. So it is August 12th, 2009. Dan is our guest tonight. This is Conversations.net. We want to thank LearnCentral.org and Illuminate for their sponsorship of this series. Illuminate is my employer, full disclosure, but they allow me to do this, and I'm appreciative of it. There's this picture of Dan. Of course, this was obviously taken 20 years ago. Dan, you're a much older man, right?
I'm 25 now. That was taken when I was 23.
Oh, you're counting in years way too short for the rest of us. So before we get started, I want to let you know, August 18th, Howard Rheingold. August 20th, Gary Small, who wrote iBrain. August 25th, the founder of Pandora, Tim Westergren. September 3rd, Manny Hernandez, who wrote Ning for Dummies. Worked for Ning as a consultant as I did for a period of time. Great guy. Ann Galerin on September 15th to talk about the European e-twinning program. John Seeley Brown on September 22nd. And Dennis Lipke to talk about big picture schools on October 6th. Still to come, still negotiating dates, Clay Shirky, Doc Searles, Dana Boyd, Tim Magner, David Thornburg, and Esther. I'm not even going to try pronouncing Esther's name, but Esther, now the chairman of the board of Creative Commons and a well-respected and loved teacher in Palo Alto. Okay, so please encourage you to visit LearnCentral.org. LearnCentral.org is the social network for educators that Illuminate is sponsoring. We call it the LC3. It's Facebook-like in scope. You can find other educators, Illuminate, and event calendaring baked in, and you can run your own free large webinars there. We'll talk about that as Dan talks about personal branding and content sharing. So please do take a look at LearnCentral.org. If this is your first time in Illuminate, I want to give you some quick pointers. On your screen, you'll see the participant box. At the bottom of your participant box is a way for you to raise your hand. It's the hand with the green arrow up. If you feel like you'd like to ask a question when we get to Q&A, or there's something that you're confused by, please feel free to raise your hand. You can also use the small emoticons next to the hand to indicate happiness, clapping, confusion, or disapproval. Those emoticons are there. There are also a green check and a red X. If Dan wants to ask you a yes/no question, you can actually reply, and we can tally up those replies. Below the participant window is your chat area. I often find that chat goes by too quickly to watch in that small window, so if you'd like, you can go up to View Layouts and select the wide layout, and you'll get a little bit better ability to watch those chats. Although you can send personal chats in there to other individuals in the session, do know that both Dan and I will see those chats. It looks like we lost Dan, and he's now back, so I'm going to give him moderator privileges. Dan, welcome back. Looks like we lost you for a second. And we do have a whiteboard, and the presentation you're seeing is in the whiteboard, and I'm going to give you permissions now to update that whiteboard so you can tell us where you're listening from. Next to the left of the map is a little wand with a red star at the end. If you click on that and then click on the map, it will know where you're listening from. So North America-centric group tonight. Oh, hey, someone may be in Peru. Please feel free to shout out where you're listening from. It's also fun sometimes to see the time and temperature. Okay, we're going to switch to a screen of just the United States for those of you in the U.S. and then parts of Canada and Mexico. Go ahead and do the same thing. Just click on where you're listening from. Oh, Ecuador. How fun. Been reading about your president in Ecuador today. Okay, nicely diverse group. Okay, well, so Dan, we're sure glad to have you here. I need to tell you that I bought Me 2.0 a couple of months ago, and it's one of the more marked up books I've ever owned. We're going to talk about the language, the marketing language, and how it might translate to a more educational audience, which is the audience that I've typically gotten. But certainly, I feel like it's just one of the really more interesting reads that I've had in a long time. So congratulations on that. And your mic isn't on, so you may want to click your mic back on if you're trying to talk. And I see your mic's on, but I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I really appreciate you reading the book.
Well, I think I'm not the only one in the group who has. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your own story and what your own personal journey has been like?
Do you want the long story or you want the short story?
Well, we have a nice hour here, so maybe somewhere in between.
Okay. It all started really back in middle school when I acquired two skills that have stayed with me for a long time. So, I mean, I would say that web development and graphic design are what I've leveraged now and have helped me develop. I have 6 websites now, so those were 2 important skills that I learned back in middle school. And then I actually was developing websites around my hobbies at the time, or my special interests. I remember I had a 007 James Bond fan site that I was kind of obsessed with, and then before I graduated, I had like a website to connect all my friends so I could keep in touch with them. And then in high school, I was a camp counselor for 3 summers, I believe, and then the last summer, my final year in high school, my parents were like, you got to get a real job now. And my dad had a connection to an entrepreneur in the area. I'm originally from Newton, Massachusetts. So he had like 3 businesses. I got involved in one of them, which was more sales oriented. And it placed me calling. I made over 1,000 cold calls in the summer. It was miserable, and I got rejected 1,000 times. I didn't get one sale, and so it was really, really tough on me, and it made me realize that sales wasn't something that I was interested in. And so I was more into back-end marketing instead of front-end, which I considered sales, so back-end supporting sales, of course. And so college started, and I knew I wanted to get involved in marketing. I knew freshman year that it was going to be hard to get a job out of school in marketing 4 years later. And so sophomore year, I had a development plan which linked me to a series of internships. So when I graduated, it would be okay. I'd have a good, strong enough profile, resume, that I would be selected over everyone else, hopefully, from Bentley College, and now it's called Bentley University. And I created a personal branding toolkit, which I didn't call it personal branding back then. I didn't even call it a toolkit. I was just trying to market myself, and that's what I called it. I was marketing myself. And so I had a business card, I had a custom cover letter, custom resume, custom references document, I had my own website, and I had a CD portfolio of all my work because I had started my own web consulting business freshman, sophomore year, and I wanted to see if I could get internships on my own without my father's help, and I ended up marketing myself into 7 more internships. So I graduated with 8 internships. The internships were in all different marketing disciplines because I was trying to figure out what type of job I wanted when I graduated, whether it be a large company, a small company, public relations, direct marketing, advertising, and I got into Reebok I was the headquarters of Reebok. It took me a year and a half to get into Reebok without any connections. I got rejected one summer, and I kept working at it, and I got in the second summer. And I also worked at LoJack, Lighthouse, and Tech Target before I graduated, as well as 7 leadership positions on campus and good grades. And so I thought I was set, because one thing I neglected, it was networking. I never really was comfortable networking at all, and so that was something that I didn't do, and I found out the hard way. It took me 8 months. So I was trying to get a job at EMC Corporation because I recognized how important it was to have a strong brand attached to you, and EMC's reputation was good, and I wanted to work in Massachusetts for a top company. And so it took me 8 months, meeting 15 people, getting rejected twice to get my first job, even with my resume and everything that I had accomplished at that point. And it was a huge learning factor, and after I got it, I was obviously I was very excited, especially because a lot of people gave up on me. They're like, oh, maybe you want to work at Dunkin' Donuts corporate or something else like that, and so I didn't give up. And it was interesting because that was one situation I didn't give up in, and then to get my internship at Reebok, I didn't give up in, and then I was actually deferred from Bentley in the beginning, and so I didn't give up on that. I did interviews, and I made sure I got in regular admissions. So those were 3 kind of stories where I struggled, but I pushed through. And then I was working at EMC in product marketing for a year or so, and I started a blog. It was called the Personal Branding Blog after reading Tom Peters' Brand Called You article, Fast Company. Cover story, August 1997. Recognized that what Tom Peters is talking about was everything that I was interested in and passionate about. And after having a blog, I had my first blog October 5th, 2006. It was called Driven to Succeed. It was on Blogger. I think it's called Blogspot now by Google. And I took that concept, pushed it into a new blog called the Personal Branding Blog. That was reflective of what I was interested in, what I could tell the world. And there was other personal branding experts at that point who had some blogs, but there was no one my age. I was 23 at the time, and so I felt like I was very well positioned in the marketplace. I wanted to own the Google page results for personal branding. That was my first main goal, long-term goal, and I almost do today. And so within 6 months, from March 14, 2007 to August 1st, 2007, I had a blog, I had a video podcast series called Personal Branding TV, I had the Personal Branding Awards, which I launched, Personal Branding Magazine, the first issue was August 1st, and I wrote articles for About.com, Brand Week Magazine, and many other blogs in magazines. And then after the 6 months, Fast Company wrote about what I was doing in 6 months. EMC had no idea what I was doing outside of work. They got wind of this article in PR, sent it to a vice president who recruited me to co-create the first social media position at EMC. After that, I knew I had a story because instead of almost pledging like a fraternity to get my first job at EMC, now they were coming for me for my expertise, not something I was working on during the work hours, but something that I was building, a brand that I was building outside of the company that got enough visibility. And they came after me, and when I thought I was going for an interview with the head of PR for EMC, so I brought all the personal branding toolkit, the website, everything I was doing, as well as the press kit into that interview, and it didn't matter. It was already sold, and so that was much different than pledging and working really hard to get in that company. And that was, build a powerful brand, be recruited based on your passion was more of my motto at that point. Wrote a book proposal, got rejected very harshly by Wiley Publishing, stood with it, tried to find agents, got rejected by 69 agents. The 70th agent rejected me a week before I got my own deal with Kaplan Publishing. And so that was my fourth more underdog, working really hard against all odds story. And then, and then I realized that the publisher wasn't going to market it for me, that I was kind of getting crapped on because I was young. I was 24 at this time. and I developed a huge marketing plan around this book. I even hired a PR person. She did no work. I won't name names, but I ended up getting all the PR by myself, so I got the book in, almost any way you could think of. New York Times, I was on TV twice, NPR twice, probably at least 80 different big brand name news sites, and I got it in about 80 or so blogs the first day. The book went up to number 220 on Amazon, still a bestseller today, still doing really well. And now I'm, the youngest columnist for Business Week, and I write for Metro US, and my blog has been taken to a whole nother level now, and I have contributors under it, and the list really goes on, but it's really that long story that I just shared with you, and never give up. And now it's much easier to monetize your passion and really make a name for yourself online using the different tools.
Okay, so what I love about the story you've just told is that you've introduced several elements that I think we're going to be able to drill down on tonight. And part of what you've done is to show that this wasn't just being in the right place at the right time, that this was a lot of hard work. You mentioned internships, you mentioned the website building, your actual capabilities there, your talents. You mentioned creating an awards program, and then being in a position where you didn't have to sell yourself necessarily, but your body of work provided an opportunity for you to go to the next level in your employment. So are you comfortable shifting a little bit to the book now?
Sure. We'll do whatever you want. I'm here for you.
Okay. Good. I like being in charge. So my first question is, what did your grandfather do to help the world?
Oh God. So my grandfather actually died the week the book came out, which is another curveball for me, but he was like an architect, and he owned a lot of homes in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. He had like 240 homes or something crazy like that, and he provided housing. He took care of everyone, and yeah, to me that his impact just on that community is world changing and life changing for the people who surrounded him. So he was an amazing individual. He instilled a lot of drive in me. So I definitely miss those phone calls each week, and he told me to always stay with it. And sadly, he didn't get to see me on TV. He didn't get to see a few things that really happened, but he got to hold the book in his hand, so that was really cool. And amazing person, and God bless. Rest in peace.
So, maybe part of the lesson there is somebody who is caring and encouraging, who helps you get through the moments where you need that hard work.
Oh yeah, it's really intense. I have a whole forum that makes fun of me. It's called Freak Safari, and then I have people on Amazon who just try and destroy my reputation. It's just the stuff I deal with is pretty insane because of there's a lot of ageism. Because I'm 25, and a lot of people are like, oh, what does he know? And then I just get a lot of people who just disagree with personal branding. So it's a lot of stuff that I see every day, and it's kind of helped me. I've really learned how to manage relationships and when to talk up and when to ignore and everything.
Well, I think it might be fun to kind of drill down in a little bit on sort of practical strategies. But before we do so, you say that the book, or maybe I heard this in an interview, is by a millennial for millennials. But I didn't actually feel, since I'm not a millennial, I didn't actually feel that was true. Are you getting a positive response from people outside of that initial demographic?
Absolutely. And some of them are giving it to their kids as well. Again, how I broke through was not to position myself as a personal branding expert. It was to use my youth alongside personal branding in order to break through the cracks and be number one of one, right? So, before anyone else my age took that positioning, I claimed it and I built a brand around it. And now it's become more and more obvious that people who read my stuff, it's anyone. Really, it's hard if an advertiser says, so who reads your blog? Everyone reads it, right? Of all these different ages and positions and industries. And that's really it, is that it applies to every single person, and it applies to companies' products. I mean, the strategies are really the same. And that's why personal branding really exists, is that, if you look at social media, I can have a Facebook page, you can have a Facebook page, Gillette razors can have a Facebook page, celebrities can have a Facebook page. Any brand can be involved in this and have a presence, as long as it's backed by the individual. And that's another reason why personal branding is so hot right now, is that it should always be hot, is that there's got to be an individual voice behind a brand, if it's corporate or product, selling it, and being that voice and being that PR person or the spokesman, spokeswoman. So that's really what's happened, is that the internet has made branding really obvious. Even though personal branding always existed, now it's a little bit more tangible, it's a little bit more obvious to people.
So I'd like to propose some, I read this book coming from the perspective of education, and I wasn't hindered in any way by the language, but we've had a good discussion here in the chat from people about the language. I'd like to propose some alternate words and see how you respond to them, and see if they would fit within the framework of what you're saying.
Sure.
So I hear personal branding, and what I think in my mind is reputation building. Is there a match?
I get this a lot. I mean, it is developing a reputation, but I just feel that personal branding is even more. I mean, it's a whole lifestyle. It's how you live. It's more than just work. It's your personal and professional life. It's everything you are. It's how people view you. So I think reputation is definitely a part of it. It's one of the key words, I would definitely say. But I think it's even more. I think personal branding is, even though it appears like it's a niche, it's the broadest term. I mean, it includes so much. It's really even hard to hammer it all down, because it applies to so many people, and there's just so many different facets of it.
Well, I'm thinking about in particular the changes in the internet and the opportunities that they provide, say, in education, and not just for students, but also for educators themselves. The guy in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Jim Bigley, who becomes an expert on using technology to teach the Civil War and music in the Civil War, and has a blog about this, and can be Skyped into a classroom. And I'm thinking about him. He may not say personal branding is a phrase that's going to immediately attract him, but he certainly would feel like building a reputation or building a specialization are things that he is actually doing.
I would agree. I mean, you can say reputation. It's not like I have a problem with it. It's more, I guess it resonates more with certain people than others.
Well, and like I said, it didn't hinder my appreciation for the book, and I think I was especially interested. At one point, I wrote in the margin, authenticity, because I'm trying to say, okay, this needs to be authentic. I mean, you need to be representing yourself, not falsely, but authentically. And then you have a whole long section in the book about authenticity.
Yeah. You have to be the real you, because everyone else has taken, and replicas don't sell for as much. And really, the key here is that if you brand yourself and there's nothing behind it, what good is it going to do for you? If you get a client but you can't fulfill their need, but you appear like you can, then you're not going to make money anyways, and they're going to have a bad impression. They might talk about it online and hurt your reputation anyways.
Well, I think it's very significant, and I think it's historically significant and tied to the web. In one part of the book, you have a quote from Libby Sartain at Yahoo, who says, "Less applying for jobs, more." I'm paraphrasing. "Less applying for jobs, more of employers finding you." So, are there some pretty significant lessons here for students, and should we be trying to figure out how to teach this?
Of course, yeah. I mean, more and more schools are using this type of information in classrooms and even in career services offices, because I'm connected to those people as well. And the lesson here is that they have to be smart. I mean, you are what you publish, and even more so is that people are searching for you online using many different tools. And so no matter no matter who you are, you're going to be judged based on what you share and create online. And, even maybe who you follow or friend. I mean, everything matters. And so people have to put more thought into it than ever before, especially because there's so many different sites where you need to be a part of now, and you can't avoid them, whether you're a person, company, product, and so forth. And so, aside not just joining them, but managing your reputation, your brand,
so
your appearance, your identity, all of these keywords is vital now. And it's not about just doing it today or 5 days from now. It's about throughout the rest of your life. I mean, this is all here to stay. It's going to evolve, of course, over time. There'll be new services that appear. There'll be other services that decline and don't exist anymore, but the same rules will always apply, is that you have to exist online, Me 2.0, but you also have to manage that throughout the rest of your life, because it's not just about going to your job and going to networking events. It's about doing the same work but online and letting people know that you're doing it almost.
So there's a little bit of delightful recursion in the fact that your personal brand is around personal branding, and I hear kind of echoes of that if we think about education, in the sense that in order for educators to help teach students to take advantage of these opportunities, they actually have to be doing it themselves.
You have to practice what you preach, and that builds the authenticity too.
Okay, so I do want to get to tactical, because I think there'll be a lot of fun for people to hear your actual sort of responses to specific things you can do. But before we do so, I'm wondering, does the openness of the web, do you think, naturally promote authenticity? What's your sense?
Our lives are completely converged, and who we are at work is who we are outside of work, and vice versa. You're going to notice that technology has it's done a lot of things. One, it has closed the gap between knowing about a place and actually being there and experiencing it. And because of that, job seekers or people in the workplace or people in education have much more information at their fingertips, and they really have more control over their lives and what they do. And the amount of options you have now is endless. I mean, there's like 300 million blogs. There's so much information, and you can opt into anything you want and soak up that information any way you want, because there's so many different ways to bring it into your world. And so, yeah, I mean, you are who you are now. There's no escape. And if you rob a bank, people are going to know, and they're going to share it, and then people at work will find out. I mean, you just can't escape anything. And we're only at the beginning of this too. I mean, you look at cell phones that can do videos and pictures, and then automatically transfer that to YouTube or Flickr, and then that spreads on the web. So this is just happening in an instant, and it's only the beginning. So the way technology is working is that phones, the new standard in phones in a few years is just going to be having all these capabilities, and it's happening now, obviously, with like an iPhone and everything, is having the abilities to take in content anywhere you are, many different types of content, voice recordings, pictures, videos, text, and then transferring it directly to the different social networks and blogs and everything, and then having people, if it's interesting or worth sharing, spread that. And so there's really no way out, and especially because everything links to each other, right? So all of that would go to Google, and then that could spread somewhere else. And I mean, it's just hard to control and manage. And so our job as individuals, whether you're in education or anywhere else, is we're going to have to spend more and more time managing our reputation as well as promoting what we have to offer. And it's tough, right? Like years ago, people's jobs were a little bit more simple, and there was obviously less competition. Now, it's a different world, and the amount of time you have to spend upkeeping your brand online has increased substantially. And now, if you don't have a website, you're screwed right now. I mean, really screwed. You need some sort of destination online, and the key is what your proper mix of personal branding elements are and how you use them. It's not just that they exist. It's not just joining everything. It's about choosing the right ones and how they work for you, and this is the same for a business or anything else. You know, whether it's a college or a high school or whether it's a Fortune 500 company, the same rules are going to just apply and apply. You just have to know what you want to do before you start doing any of this stuff, before you get involved and engaged. And that's the problem that I've seen a lot of people run into. Not to go on about this, we started about converging, is that you know, if you're representing your company or your college or your high school or whatever, and you push more of your brand and don't support your company, then it's a loss of opportunity of you giving more value to the company or the college, and it will make you look bad too. So it's really being able to properly balance, and I'm not talking about work-life balance. I don't really believe in work-life balance, but I believe that you need to strike balance between who you promote. You know, if it's 40% yourself and 60% your company, that might make sense for you depending on your situation and what your career goals are and what your business needs are. And so that's really key, is really striking balance between how you promote yourself, how much time you spend building what brand.
Dan, what about the balance between putting yourself in a favorable light and not being excessively self-promoting? How do you manage that?
You have to promote others. That's really the key. I really believe the most powerful idea in personal branding, and I posted about this on Monday, is branding by association. And you can't brand by association unless you help other people. And that's really how you build a brand, is through other brands, working for large brands, getting endorsed by large brands. That's really how you build your own brand. That's how most people do. And so the key is that you need to put yourself in a position where you can network and provide value and support other people. And the easiest way to do that is by blogging or by being on the social networks, retweeting and interviewing other professionals like you're doing right now. And it's really just putting the spotlight on other people and promoting others, but at the same time, what you'll notice is that you're promoting yourself while promoting others. So it's really a two-win situation, plus it puts you in a position where you're networking, and you always should be networking because networking is life, and the second you stop networking, the second you stop growing. And it's so much easier now. And no one can complain about networking or that they can't really progress in their careers or meet mentors or anything, because people are more accessible than ever before. They're recruiting all their information. You can send a Facebook message to almost anyone now. You can tweet anyone. Maybe not everyone will follow you, but it is a different world, and you got to take advantage of this world before everyone else does, and you don't, and you get left behind.
So there's something kind of strangely magical about what you've just said, meaning that it almost feels like the benefit has shifted to the altruistic, more connector type of person. Do you think that's true?
Say that again?
Well, what I'm wondering is if the advantage has shifted to people who are naturally connectors or naturally collaborative and interested in helping others. If what you've said is true, it feels like that's kind of a magical shift.
Yeah, what I find interesting is, again, take Twitter for example. One of the big things that people like on Twitter is retweets, because that's how you spread your message. And for the most part, what gets retweeted? Good content. And are you going to have all the good content all the time? Probably not. So you're going to have to actually read other people and tweet about their content. And when you do that, you're helping them, but at the same time, you're seen as a valuable contributor, so you'll probably get more followers and more retweets. That's just one example. So yeah, soft skills, communication. if you don't have good communication skills, you're in real trouble right now. I mean, you gotta get those communication skills, and you can get those communication skills by starting to communicate. That's the easiest way to get it, to start to blog, to start to share, to start to do this stuff. You can attend 1,000 workshops, but if you're not actually putting it into motion or seeing for yourself how it can best work for you, then it's not going to work for you. Then you're just not going to get anywhere.
So Dan, what about the vulnerability when you put yourself out there? How do you deal with negative reactions? What do you do about making mistakes? How do you move on when everything is so publicly visible and something doesn't go right?
You have to make mistakes. It's the only way you learn, at least from my experiences. And when other people call you on those mistakes, or when you notice the mistakes, to be upfront with them and be honest and explain what happened. Like if your site goes down and everyone's freaking out, or you didn't email your customer back in a week or anything like that, then you're going to have to make up for it. And if you don't, then you're going to suffer. So it's really about reactionary business now, and just doing whatever you can, have an execution mind, just trying to make things happen. And if something does happen, then you're going to have more of a disaster recovery strategy to fix everything. So
those of us who are relatively visible within whatever spheres we are have experienced criticism where it maybe didn't feel like it was deserved. Is there a little bit of a dark side to the ease of communication in the web? Does it make it easier for some people to sling mud?
It does, because everyone has a voice, and that voice can carry now pretty fast. So you have to watch what you say, and you have to patrol. You have to keep tabs on your brand. You have to use google.com/alerts and set a comprehensive alert up for your name, your competitor's name, topics in your industry. And you just got to keep tabs on what people are saying about you. If they say something bad, you have to make a judgment call. Right? If it's factual, you might have to fess up. If it's a lie or exaggerated, then you might want to contact that person directly. If it's really out of whack and they don't even have a big following, then I wouldn't even bother with it. You have to make a call for yourself to see how you want to react.
So do you think that the potential for having to deal with that is sometimes a barrier to entry? Meaning, do we kind of keep ourselves a little bit in a shell because the moment we put ourselves out there, we might have to deal with that kind of criticism?
Yeah, I think it makes it hard for a lot of people. If you can't deal with criticism, it's going to be really, really hard for you to get involved online and be engaged, because you're going to get criticized if you're doing something right. If you're not getting criticized, that means you're not succeeding online. You need to have that backlash to prove that what you're doing is different or new or cool or anything like that. It justifies it, in my opinion.
Okay, so be thinking about questions you'd like to ask Dan. I'm going to go on for another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll open the floor up to questions. Dan, what about specific strategies? I know that for me, holding interview series, building social networks, blogging have been really significant. Are there other sort of surefire ways for people to get started?
You have to know what your brand is. And even more so, it has to be a niche. And that's really how you stand out. The most work for brand building, in my opinion, takes place before you even start launching a blog or joining social networks or starting an email list or applying for jobs or anything. You really, really need to know what you want to do and what you want to be known for. I think the real key to everything is what I call the success triangle, and there are 3 sides to this. 1 is passion, 2 is expertise, and the last one is the support system. Now, here's the key. Passion is the fuel for personal branding. It makes somebody never give up and put in the amount of work needed in order to be successful. So without that, you're not going to be happy either. The second piece is expertise. expertise is important because if you're not an expert, or if you don't use your passion to be excited enough about something to become an expert, then you're not going to fulfill a customer's needs or a company's needs, and therefore...
Dan, I lost your audio. So Dan, the last thing you said was, if you don't have passion, you're not going to fulfill someone's needs. So you'll have to turn your mic back on. Looks like you dropped off and had to come back in.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Did you know where you stopped? Were you cut off?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know where I am. So as an expertise, if you need expertise, you can't just be passionate, because you won't make any money being passionate, and you don't want to be broke and doing nothing. And so you need the expertise. Maybe use the passion to get excited enough about something to gain the skills to get the expertise. But you need to become that expert, or that future expert at some point. And that is how you fulfill and are positioned to fulfill a client's or a company's needs. That's how you'll make the money. And then the last piece of it is like the key, because it's really how you build your brand, it's how you move ahead in your career, and that is a support system. So let's say it again, it's passion, expertise, and support system. Support system is the networking piece. It's using your passion and your expertise in order to meet other people like you, other people who have complementary skills that can help you maybe build a business or whatever. And so by having all three of those in place, you'll be happy. You'll do what you're good at, so you'll make the most amount of money. You won't give up, so you'll keep with it, so you'll be able to build it to a very high level, hopefully. And then support system is how you'll find the other people to support you as you cross the finish line or achieve your milestones or goals.
So I really love what you've just said, and I can see in the chat you're getting a lot of huge positive feedback. I don't know if you've been able to look at the chat at all, but I love you, Dan, has appeared at least once. So it also seems to me that a part of the story you told at the beginning, and it's a larger part of the story of open source software and the web, is the willingness to work for free. And I'm going to qualify that, but the willingness to kind of prove yourself. You did internships, others work on code or write Wikipedia articles. What's your response to that, and how important do you think that is?
If you've read Chris Anderson's book, Free, you'll probably know that it's a free type of economy now. And the way the media has changed, doing things for free is, especially if you're in marketing or you're marketing yourself, you pretty much have to. Blogging is free. It's really hard to make money blogging. I can't say I made $1 million blogging or anything even close to that. But by giving away things for free, that can go viral and be seen by many more people who will get to know you, get to know what you provide, and therefore they're more willing to purchase your services, whether that's speaking, consulting, whether it's a product you're offering, whether they want to hire you. And that's really the key. Free allows you to build brand awareness, which is the first step in the product purchase cycle in marketing. Sorry to bring up marketing, but that's the key. And so once they get to know you, then they might buy you, if you know what I mean. And so if they don't go through the awareness part first, which free enables, then how are they going to buy you? How are they going to buy services from you? How are they going to find you online? How is anything going to happen for you? Free is the entry point to forming the relationship with other people so that they come to you and may buy your services, or a portion may buy your services in some way, whether it's hiring, whether it's consulting, whatever it is. Free is the entry point to getting people to know about you.
Okay, well, I need to introduce Teresa Beffa, who's my sort of behind-the-scenes helper lady. And Teresa, I'm sure you're madly taking notes here to be able to promote this, right?
Of course, I am.
Okay,
writing like crazy. So, and actually, I do have a couple questions already.
Okay, well, we'll let you go first with the questions, but I'm going to quickly close with a statement, Dan, that you said, and then turn the time over to those who are here. I thought this was just wonderfully profound. You said in the book, as I developed my personal branding strategy and started sharing it, personal branding became less about me and more about others. Before, I would wake up every morning and say to myself, I want to make the largest impact in the least amount of time. Now I say, I want to help others avoid mistakes I made and find real success and happiness in their lives. So really appreciate your being on. Okay, so Teresa, you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, oh, actually, I was going to start. Kathleen had asked a comment, or she made a comment from the very beginning, and she said, do you do interviews with students? Or have you considered doing it through Skype? Or
So you're thinking of, for people in the audience listening, or is this to Dan specifically?
Yeah, it was to Dan specifically. Kathleen had asked the question in the little chat box. If you do interviews with students, or if you've talked to classes.
It looks like we lost Dan again, but he's coming back. Hang on. So Dan, you've come back, but your mic is off. The question was, have you done?
I'm here.
Go ahead and ask the question again, Terry.
One of the participants, Kathleen, had asked if you have done any interviews with students, or if you'd consider doing it through Skype.
Interview students for Skype.
Well, I think whether or not you'd come into a class or talk to students specifically about personal branding.
Oh, yeah.
We've lost your audio again, Dan. I wonder if it's an internet connection issue.
Sure.
Dan, we'll see if you come back, but we lost your audio. Now it looks like he's about to drop off. Okay, so we'll try bringing him back in again. Sorry, Dan, we keep losing you. It must be some kind of a connection issue.
Yeah, I think I have a connection issue right now, but let's try and work our way through this. Did you hear my answer to that one?
No, unfortunately, I have to start again. Yeah.
Sorry.
So Dan, if you're talking, we're not hearing you again. And it does sound like you have an internet connection issue. Okay, so queue up those questions when Dan comes back. We've got a good first one for him, and Terry, you maybe have another. There we go. Dan, we think you're back.
Hello?
Hello?
You are.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've talked to a lot of students in the Northeast, MIT, Harvard, different schools.
And are those accessible to everyone, or is it a case by case?
You mean my presentations?
Mm-hmm.
There's clips on my YouTube channel, but I'm going to start offering it as a product because they're like an hour and a half each.
So that says to me, go get them now quickly.
Yeah, well, no, there's only clips on YouTube right now. There's like, each one's like maybe 2 to 3, 5 minutes maybe.
Well, that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, you'll tweet it out, and we'll see when you actually do offer those. Terry, was there another question?
Yeah, actually, another question I had was back to the corporate versus personal branding. And you went on, we were talking about having a voice for yourself versus your company. And there's been a lot of discussion recently in the social media marketer area with ESPN, and I'm sure you've been following that. Have you?
No, I didn't hear about that one.
Well, they actually put a policy together to talk up to and sent out to the company as to what they could or could not say about the company on their own personal space. I didn't know if that was something you've talked to people about, personal branding versus working for a company. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of companies that have social media policies. I mean, EMC's developing one, and we have like a draft one. But Yahoo has one. A lot of these, like HP has one.
So how do you feel about recommending some guidelines to people? I mean, obviously you don't want to say anything inappropriate, but differentiating between yourself personally and that message of your company.
The key is to know your role and use common sense. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's not. And it's kind of, people just got to get carried away with their ego, and they forget that no matter what disclaimers they have, they still are associated with their company, and so they have to be smart in different situations, right? So if you have a blog that talks about your expertise that's you're using for your company, you got to be a little bit smarter about what you put on there. Whereas if it's about your dog or your vacations, then it doesn't matter as much.
So
and that's really it's by your you got to just judge it by your situation, you know. And if you're in a situation where you're interviewed for something that relates to your profession directly, you'll probably have to go in and be cited as someone who works for that company rather than for yourself. And it depends on your career. There's so many different elements to this, but you just have to be smart. You just have to use your best judgment.
So you are saying that you do recommend for anybody that's listening right now that once they're starting out in blogging or whatnot to kind of have a disclaimer with their authenticity.
Yeah, you can, but the disclaimer is still not going to really matter too much because people are just going to still see you as, you know, Henry Smith, professor at Yale. You know, people are just going to still, and you should use that because that's the credibility piece. You can't really hide it. You can have a disclaimer, but it's still not even going to matter. You just have to be smart. I mean, it sounds simple, but people just aren't always thinking when they do it, especially on Twitter when you don't really, like I don't even think when I'm really posting it. I think, but a lot of people don't really think too hard for each tweet. It just happens. It's like your live stream. It's something you don't think about. And I'm saying that you might want to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Do you want to open the, thanks Dan, did you want to open it to the floor?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take any questions.
If you have a question that Teresa didn't ask and it's been in the chat and it's flown by and we've missed it, please feel free to repost it or use the hand with the green up arrow to raise your hand and we'll give you the mic and you can ask Dan a question. Then the question is, how do we promote online collaboration when various factions within education are terrified of the Wild West nature of the Internet?
You have to lead by example. You have to show them it works by doing it yourself. And that's the key, is that getting students to collaborate and showing the results that they had after using it rather than before is more of a case study that you can use to prove to them that it matters. You know, and so it can be tough to convince people social media works, right? It took me, I got my position November 2007, and it took me probably 6 or 7 months to really break through and convince the executives to get a hold of social media and to develop the program, even though that's why I was hired. But you just have to stick with it. And if you really believe in it, you can't give up, just like we've talked about earlier in the call. You know, social media, whether people like it or not, it's changing education. And you either want to jump on board and have a future as one of the top teachers or professors or whatnot, or, I mean, you're going to be in a disadvantage, you know, and to be one of the leaders, to be one of the heroes, to make it happen in your school is a big deal. And so I really think that that's the way to go, and you don't want to be left out, and you know, you won't be able to do it any other way, because if you're really hooked into this stuff, you're just going to want to do it.
So Dan, we have a question that's going to come through from the mic. Angela, I'm giving you the mic, and you can turn your mic on and ask.
Hey Dan, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, good to talk to you voice to voice. Finally, I'm glad you found Illuminate. Good. One of the things I totally agree that it's very hard to explain this to someone else, especially our students, if we have not made that awareness and that commitment ourselves to be transparent and to live who we want to be every day, both on and offline. So when I try to help teachers conceptualize what you're talking about, my first step is to have them Google themselves. just so that they see what comes up. What would you say would be, once that awareness is there, what would be the first lesson that you think that they should model or share with students to help bring this conversation into the classroom?
The first lesson, I would say that you need to show them a case study of someone doing it right and someone doing it wrong, preferably the company or the individual who did it wrong. I think one of the cool examples, it actually happened recently when a study just came out. It said that 8% of companies have fired someone based on what they saw on Facebook. And there's one great example, and I mean, you could probably Google this, of someone getting laid off because they didn't realize that they were friends with their manager on Facebook, and so they updated their Facebook status saying, "Oh, I really hate my position and my manager," or something like that. And then underneath, under the comments section, the manager pretty much said, "You're fired." And so that's a good example to show them. And then you'd want to show them a positive example of someone using social media to get a job or to advance a career. And there's infinite of those. I mean, if you look at my last Business Week column, if you go to businessweek.com, it's like skip job boards and use social media. There's like 5 success stories there of using it, and that's really it. I think case studies bring it to life, and then having third-party endorsements can help you as well. So non-teachers or non-teachers from your school coming in and helping out.
Hey Dan, we're going to take at least maybe just one more question. You've got a few minutes left. While we're waiting for someone to raise their hand or put the question in the chat, Teresa, if you wouldn't mind looking for that, I'm going to put up the link to the survey for tonight's show. So Dan, because you have moderator privileges, you and Teresa, don't close this window down. It'll come up and you may be tempted to close it down, but if you do so, it will close it for everyone. This is the survey for tonight's show. We'd sure appreciate it if you'd fill it out. I'll put the link also in the chat. Okay, and I'm going to give the mic to Joan. In order to speak, you need to click on the mic button in the audio area. There you go.
All right. I'm glad to be here. I'm enjoying this presentation greatly. I'm an avid Illuminate fan and now online teacher. I put a question higher up, and I just scrolled up to read it. As a former brick-and-mortar school teacher, I used my nickname, Maestro Circe, as my online footprint. There are now over 6,500 results with my nickname on Google. I've since started my own educational services business, Teach Me, Help Me, altogether, which now has close to 4,500 results on Google. How can I better my brand or my ID and bring more traffic to my ads-based free blog, forum, poll, multimedia educational sites?
So you're looking for more results for your name, your consulting business relative to your past life. Is that what you're looking for? And you want those to fill? So if you Google yourself the top 10 results, it's going to be a mixed match of your current and previous life. Is that what you're saying?
You'll have to turn your mic back on.
Okay. Actually, these nicknames are pretty much unique. Teach Me, Help Me together, and also Maestro Circe is unique to me, so I know it's not used by other people. What I'm trying to see is how can I use this, let's say, popularity of thousands of hits on Google to maybe bring myself more traffic to my sites. Should I go on YouTube and create videos? Is there a way to become even more popular and hopefully more successful?
Well, I would say a blog. I would also say Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, creating groups, fan pages, building up an audience on all of them, and wherever you can, linking from all of those services back to that one destination that you want to build. whatever that may be, and whatever you do, just constantly promote that URL, whether it's an email signature, whether you're giving a presentation to a class, whatever you're doing, just use that URL and put it in there. And it's really hard to say. I would say, I have a whole book on blogging that I distribute for free that you can get to. It's if you Google 53-page complete blogging guide, that's a book that'll walk you through how to drive traffic to your blog and promote it. And there's a lot of tips in there that you can use as well. So there's a lot you can do. I would figure out what you want your destination to be, and then use everything you have to drive to it. So it could be writing an article for an online website, guest posting on blogs, commenting on other blogs, presentations, you name it. So it's just using all the marketing elements and then driving it back to one main spot.
Okay, Dan, I want to be sensitive to your time. I'm thinking it's 9 o'clock for you, and you're doing your hour. So, okay, let's everybody clap for Dan. Thank you, Dan. We're using a little clap.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, terrific show. That we'll post the recordings tomorrow. I'm sure Teresa will pull some great quotes out. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. Thanks to Illuminate for providing this environment. And thanks for spending some of your time tonight with Conversations.net. Okay, Dan, sure appreciate all the time.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We'll leave the room open for a couple of minutes, but then we have to kick you out so that the recording will process. Sure had a good time tonight. Want to recommend Me 2.0 by Dan, available through Amazon or your local bookstore. We tried to put some links in the chat log as well, and we'll post the chat and the recordings tomorrow so you can look back through them if there's something you missed that you want to see. So have a great night, everybody.